Hey, everybody. So, I wanted to tell you about something that I think is pretty special. My daughter Tessa and I have birthdays 9 days apart. She is about to turn 9 on November 30th, and I'm going to turn 44. Here's me telling everybody my age on December 9th. This year, Tessa told me that she wanted to donate her birthday to an organization that's special to both of us, and it's something that I do every single year. I'm so honored that my little bug knows how important it is to give and how much we receive when we do so. It won't come as a surprise to any of you who listen on a regular basis that I am charity driven and we are donating our birthday to the Birthday Party Project. It's an organization that is very near and dear to my heart. The Birthday Party Project focuses on bringing joy to children living in homeless shelters and transitional living facilities. They host monthly birthday parties at these facilities all across the country, and every child should be celebrated. That's what the Birthday Party Project does. They also bring so much joy and love to people who aren't celebrating their birthdays. Lots of these folks don't get a chance to go to birthday parties and to celebrate. It's really just a very special organization. And we all know that joy changes lives and giving is good. So here's my shameless plug. If you would like to support my daughter, who is turning 9, and me with our birthday fundraiser, you can check out the link in the show notes, but also it's share.thebirthdaypartyproject.org/fundraiser/Tessa. Would love to have you help us reach our very lofty goal of $1,000 raised for this awesome organization. Thanks so much, and here's the show.
Faith, tides, determination.
You are listening to The Brave Files, real stories from people living courageously. You can listen to the show anywhere you enjoy podcasts, and we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on Apple Podcasts. It really does make a difference, and we appreciate it. Now here's your host, Heather Vickery.
Hi, everybody. It's Heather Vickery. Welcome to this episode of The Brave Files. Today, I welcome a guest whose story both breaks my heart and makes me pump my fists in the air and cheer. Paula Creed-Smith got a raw deal as a child, and she worked hard to overcome that trauma, but overcome she did. Paula is here today to share her story of living in the foster care system and independent living. Paula, I have to say this. I downloaded your headshot right before the interview, and you glow in that photo. I know that sounds silly. Everybody's like, why is she talking about a photo? But I look at a lot of headshots, and I have a background in event planning, and I look at a lot of pictures, and there is something about that so captures your soul and your joy. It's just a really great photo. So I'm delighted to have you on the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. I've really been looking forward to this. Yeah, we met months ago, and we've just now been able to sit down together. And so I'm excited for people to get a glimpse into what sort of you've been through and how you've built this beautiful, healthy, happy life for yourself. Can you just sort of dig in a little bit and give us some background?
Sure. Well, I was raised in a very conservative West Indian home, specifically Jamaican. And for your listeners who are familiar with that culture, you know, it's very much young girls are to be seen and not heard. We're obedient, you know, people pleasing. And that was me to a fault. I was, you know, in the choir at my church. I was in the young evangelist group. I was on the church's dance team. I was in the school choir. I played the violin. I did well in school. I never got in trouble at home. And so I really tried to embody this perfect little girl. I struggled with that because I felt like it didn't seem natural to me, being that Jamaican women are also known to be very strong and opinionated women. And seeing how my mother and my grandmother who raised me, and seeing that that's who they were, and wanting so much to be like them, but feeling like I had to be this other person, and dealing with you know, some abuse that was happening. You know, a relative and a friend of the family, both abusing me at a young age sexually, and struggling with maintaining that facade of I have to be this happy girl, I have to do well, I have to succeed, I have to make sure everybody else is okay. And it did something to me, but I think it also prepared me for the life that I would end up living and the work that I did in social work. And so while it's painful to look back on that time, I'm also grateful for it because when I meet people who share a similar story, regardless of what background or what religion or, whatever, I understand what it feels like to be wrestling with who you truly are and who you hope to be and who the person that you're trying to, be for everyone else. It's incredibly hard. And as a child, where life should really be at its simplest at that time is,
It
just
should.
what doll am I going to play with, or what
Yeah.
cartoon am I going to watch this morning?
Yeah. It's too
Which
much
was not the
pressure.
case for me.
Mm-mm. First of all, I'm so terribly sorry that you had to experience any sort of physical abuse, sexual abuse, or trauma. That just, too many of those stories are coming out, and we've always known that they're there. And I'm glad now that that's something that we're not ashamed to talk about, because it's so important to
Yes.
be loud about it. And yet, every time I hear it, a little part of me breaks. It's just that little girl in you. I want to save you, but you saved yourself. So from there, what happened? Because the story gets even more complicated as you continue to grow older.
It does. My grandmother, who was my rock, I love this woman. I absolutely adored her. And the funny thing about her is that she was super strict. I mean, very, very strict. But at times she would be just very gentle. And she cultivated my faith in such a powerful way that, I didn't understand it at the time as a child. But now as an adult and living out my faith and looking back, I can see, her handprint on my life and on my heart and the way that I perceive things. And so when she was diagnosed with cancer, it was a shock. And the decision was made because of how old she was. She was 86 at the time. One, not to tell her, she knew she was sick, but the doctors had determined at that point that, chemo would kill her faster than the cancer itself. She'd be very sick, and they were thinking quality of life versus quantity.
It's interesting. My grandfather, who is 86, has recently been diagnosed with throat and mouth cancer. And,
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, thank you. It's a horrible. What kind of cancer did your grandmother have?
Liver cancer.
That's also bad. This is it's just violent and gross. But he is my grandfather. Until he got sick, really sick a few months ago, he laid brick every day of his life because he's a bricklayer, and that's what you do. You get up and go to work. So he's otherwise very strong and healthy. And they are doing some treatment. They're not doing surgery because that would, it's disgusting. You'd have to take his tongue out. Like, it's really bad. But
oh my gosh, yes.
He kind of knows, but he doesn't really understand what's happening. But he's decided to go for it. And I'm like, well, listen, if it gives you 5 to 10 more years, let's do this. But I can't imagine not telling him that he's sick. That's an interesting choice.
I wrestled with it because by this time now I'm about maybe 12. And I couldn't understand. And I knew that she knew. And I deeply believe that when people come to the end of their life, regardless of what you believe, that you're aware. I believe there's a new awareness that sets in that says, my time is ending.
I think you're
right. And I believe that she knew that. She didn't understand what was the end of her life. Like, she didn't know what was causing it, but I knew that she was close. Mm-hmm. Just in the things that she said and the way that she acted. And she was just very peaceful. Again, profound faith this woman had. And so nothing scared her. She just, this is it, this is my end, and that's fine. And it just, I don't know. And I wrestle with it even now, thinking like, would I want to know? Like, if I could have the expiration date of my life, would I really want to know?
It's so interesting you say that. I went to the theater last night with my friend Jennifer, who listens to the show. Hi, Jen. We've been going to the theater together for 20 years. And that was a topic of conversation. There's apparently an app out that you can plug some information in, and it'll tell you your expiration date. And it was a conversation like, why would you want to know that? And I would not want to know that. I would not want to know that. Would you want to know?
I don't know. I go back and forth because it's like, if I know how little time I have left, would I be better about the way that I use my time, because it's so precious and you can't get it back, you know? And
Agreed.
so would it help me be more intentional with the things that I do with my kids and the things that I say to them and how I interact with my husband and the people that I love, you know, building that legacy, really building that foundation of the legacy. But then at the same time, would it be like I wake up every morning dreading like I'm just another day closer? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
I guess I would rather strive for, we're all going to make mistakes, but trying to live like you don't know what's coming next. So say the right things and
yeah,
do the right things. And of course, we're all going to screw it up. But for the most part, for me, I'd rather just try to do my best and hope that's good enough. I don't know. That's tricky.
yeah.
Okay, all of you who are listening,
and I do.
write in and tell us, would you want to know or not? I want to know what you think of it.
Absolutely. I want to know what everybody thinks too, so please tell me.
I will for sure. Okay, so unfortunately your grandmother passed away and that had a profound effect on you.
It did. I mean, I say destroyed, but that is not even the right word. It pales in comparison to how just broken I was. Like I felt like if you picked me up and shook me, like you could feel the broken pieces inside of me rattle.
Oh, that's such an image. Wow.
I went into a deep depression. You know, I started drinking, started smoking.
At the age of 12.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old. That scares me.
It's scary. I know. And you know, even more disturbing is that up until, you know, this was happening, I was still, you know, the straight A student, still very active in, you know, my church and all of that, and, you know, did my chores and, you know, so no one really knew. It's wow. You know, once everything came out, it was a shock to my mother and the people in, you know, that grew up around me. And they're like, wow, how did we miss all of this? And I apparently am a great actress. So if my current business doesn't work out, then I have a plan B apparently. But
well, you have a great radio voice too. So, you know, we could do a podcast together.
Let's do it. You know, I was just really lost, you know, and I struggled with my faith. I was very bittered, and I actually did walk away from my faith for a period of time and just wrestled with, you know, who am I if not this person that has this deep faith? And, you know, everything that my grandmother taught me, was it now lost? Was the last thing that I had to remember her? And, you know, this thing that we shared, is it trash now if I no longer share this belief with her and she's not here anymore, then what is left? And it really did send me into a dark place for a long time. I attempted suicide several times, and I was just very bitter, just bitter, and I didn't really care what happened to me, and I wasn't prepared for the loss because we weren't allowed to talk about it.
Yeah,
you know, preparing. You know,
that's so important, right? That's why the good girl who does all the right things and is seen and not heard, that's why she's so dangerous, because if you can't talk about things and process them, you're going to explode. Like it's going to come out somehow. And then for you, it came out in this terrible, tragic way. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people who aren't allowed to talk about it, whatever it is.
Yeah, I agree.
And so your mother, from my understanding, could not handle the things that were happening with you. Is that?
Yeah, no, if I would say, if it were a contest between who was more broken, I would definitely say it was my mom. And the reason for that is, you know, she was in the nursing field, as were just about every other woman ever born in my generation, in my family. They were all nurses or midwives. And, you know, my mom, you know, she loved her job, and, you know, she gave it up when she realized what was happening with my grandmother. She quit and she became a full-time caregiver. And, you know, she'd already struggled with depression and, you know, so it was a lot. It was a load for her to take on, and trying to parent, you know, granted me and my brother were both, you know, older. And so we were pretty self-sufficient, but, at the same time, just trying to be a mom and trying to be a caregiver and not lose yourself completely. And, you know, it took a toll on her. And so when my grandmother finally did pass away, I feel like there just was this void that just kind of appeared in my mom, and it just kind of sucked up all of who she was. And so she started to drink very heavily. She was very depressed, and I feel like she just kind of gave up. She, my grandmother had become her reason for existing at that point. She got up every morning and she made my grandmother her breakfast and she gave her her medicine. And,
My mom went through that with her mom as well as the care provider.
yes,
It's all consuming.
it is. It is. And, and I went through it with my mom for a little bit when she was sick. I could see that I was losing my mom and I couldn't do anything. I was young and I didn't really have the mental capacity to fully understand what was happening with her, much less to reach out and help her, and the best that I could offer sometimes was a hug. But even then I wasn't much better off. And it was a hard time for our family.
So tell us how you ended up in the foster care system.
Oh yeah, that was so crazy. It kind of just all spilled out. It came out that I wasn't coming to school. At this point, I was skipping school. I mean, days and days I wasn't going to school. This wasn't even me just skipping a period. This was me, 2 and 3 days. I'm just not going to school. And, the school, obviously they get involved. The guidance counselor who I love, Miss Gaines, if you happen to come across this, I love you. And I appreciate everything that you did.
Let's find Miss Gaines. Let's find her.
You know what? I should. I wonder if she has a Facebook. I've never even thought to look her up until now, but she was incredible. And she just kind of asked me, she called me to her office. She's like, what's going on with you? And so it just kind of all came out. And I wasn't thinking that anything would happen. I just thought she wanted to know. And I'm sure she did just want to know, but I didn't realize that there were going to be, like actions taken based off of what I said.
Right. Which of course is her job to protect you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And, I wasn't even upset when everything happened. And, I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like but it's probably better that I didn't know, because I probably would have put on my happy face and
sure.
I'm okay. I've just been sick or, whatever.
So she reported the fact that there was some neglect, right?
Yes.
And
yes, DCF, they stepped in.
Yeah.
They did an investigation and they found that my mom at the time was unfit, which she was, not because she was abusive, but just her mental state was just, she was a wreck. She couldn't take care of me.
And how old was your brother at this time?
He had just turned, I believe, oh gosh, let me think. I was 13 when I was first adjudicated. So he had just turned 18 because we're 5 years apart.
So he was an adult out on his own. Okay.
Right. If you could call it that. He was a very troubled man.
18 isn't an adult anyway, even if you're troubled or not troubled, but considered an adult legally.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Which is, horrible. But I have my issues with that.
I agree.
Yeah, they did take custody of me. My mom had a friend who I call him my foster dad. He was her best friend, and he lived not far away. So I would hop on my bike and ride over there. He would let me, he was a single guy. He had a whole house, and he's like, anytime you need a break, just come. And so I would just go and I would just sleep, hang out there, and he was really the first adult man that I felt like didn't want anything from me.
Yeah.
Like he just simply was ready to step into the role of father.
Wow.
And so I
Thank
love
goodness
him
for
deeply.
him.
Oh yeah, he's incredible. He was actually at my wedding. He gave me away, and we're still in contact. And I'm so grateful for Ken. He's not much for technology, but if he does happen to hear this, I love you so much. But DCF, they were this was before child welfare had been privatized here in Florida. And so there was a very negative connotation attached to a single man wanting to foster a girl. And even though I was doing very well there, my grades had started to come back up, and, I was on the uptick. Like I was still doing a lot of really dumb crap, but I was doing better. They had deemed that it was not a safe place for me to be. And so they removed me from him. They placed me with a friend of the family, a girl who I was in her class, and, we were friends, and her parents were like, all right, we're going to do it. We're going to foster you. I messed that up by sleeping with their son.
Oh boy.
So of course, obviously they kicked me out when they found out.
Self-sabotage left and right, right?
Yeah, it was really ridiculous. Like I would sneak out with their daughter, and with smoking weed, or just dumb kid stuff. And yeah, I just was not smart. And so after I was with them, there was a woman that went to our church, and she went on to become a pastor. She left the church and became a pastor of her own church. And all of the kids, we all hung out. We all, grew up in Sunday school and did VBS and all of that together. We were all in the choir together. So we were all friends. She was already a foster parent. And so she already had her license. She already had her background checks. All of that was already in order. And so she's like, I'll take you. And so I was so grateful. And I did love this woman. And she passed away a couple years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But she was a beautiful woman, very sweet. She did try her absolute hardest with me. And again, very self-sabotage. I started dating one of the other guys that was there. And, it didn't end well. They caught us making out,
With your foster brother.
Yes. Yeah. Right. And, so she's like, I can't have you here doing this, which I understood.
Mm-hmm.
And, I ended up then I needed a surgery. I know before the surgery.
What?
Before the surgery. This is actually before the surgery. So then I was placed in an all-girls group home, which was different. I mean, I had never been the type to have a lot of girlfriends. I had one or two very close girlfriends growing up, but I was definitely a tomboy. And so I hung out with mostly guys. So being in a house with 30 other girls and sharing a room with 4 of them was not ideal. But my first night at the group home, I went AWOL. So I ran away with one of the girls and we went to a party and I hooked up with a guy there.
Well,
yeah, I just kept doing this very destructive thing with myself, and I couldn't stop. Like I knew it was asinine. I knew it was crazy, but I just couldn't stop. I came back. They accepted me back because usually if you run, they discharge you from their program. But my caseworker, she was just wonderful. Patty,
yeah.
She's awesome. She asked them to let me stay. I stayed. I grew to love the place. I grew to love some of the staff that worked there, and a lot of the girls I'm still friends with today. After I came to find that I needed surgery, and I kind of was aware of it before I went into foster care, but it just never really happened. That I needed a hip surgery. I had a congenital dislocation of my left hip.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was kind of painful. And anyway, they got the court order because I was a ward of the state now. So they had to get permission from the court.
Wow.
And so the court did grant that I could have the surgery. And so I had the surgery, but I could not go back to my group home because it was not a handicap accessible facility. And so I had to leave the place where I'd been a few months and kind of put down some roots and felt like I was kind of finding my way again. And
so much transition.
It was a lot. And it was in a short period of time. I mean, from the time that my grandmother died until the surgery, it had been just over a year. I mean, like a year and 3 months, like literally. And so it was a lot happening. And I had the surgery and I moved into a lockdown facility, which was handicap accessible. It was the only one in the area. Yeah. And I did my best there. I went to school on campus, which worked out well because I skipped a grade while I was there.
So you're a very smart woman. You were a very smart child.
They say that. They say that. I have the ability to just retain a lot of information, and
okay.
I don't know that I would call myself smart in the scholastic sense. There are areas of my life and where I will identify as slightly savvy, but
well, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself a little grace.
Working on that daily.
What was the lockdown facility like? That sounds terrifying to me.
You know what? And when you say it sounds bad, but it wasn't that bad. Like, obviously nobody wants to be in a locked facility, but I've also spent a night in jail. So I had that comparison to make. And it wasn't like that. It was very clinical. Like it's a behavioral center.
Sure.
So that came with its own obstacles. In order for Medicaid to pay for it, they had to come up with diagnoses for me. Some of them were true. Some of them were accurate diagnoses. And some of them were just systematic, just failing up the system is what we call it. And where you
Makes me
attach
angry.
it was difficult because what was happening is that I was ending up on medications that I really didn't need, but that's another story.
Ugh.
um, but the facility, I ended up making some great friends, and again, some of those people I'm still in contact with. I was really attached to some of the staff, and I was there for about a year. I met a guy. I fell madly, deeply in love with him, and he moved to their transitional facility. And I followed shortly after a few months, and we were together, and I was smitten. I broke all kinds of rules to maintain this relationship because they forbade it. And I'm like, if
Uh-huh.
you forbid me from doing anything, that's a guarantee that I'm going to do it. And
Like
so
most
we did
kids.
stay together. I moved to the facility. I don't know what happened. I mean, we broke up. Well, we took a break, and I kind of slipped back into this depression and just, what am I doing? And what happens next? And not going to school. And there was a staff member that came in to the room. I was on the top bunk, and it was just dark, and I was just curled up, and I didn't go to school that morning again. And she's like, you know what? You're not going to be shit. And
Oh,
I don't know
wow.
what about that. It kind of snapped me back into reality. Like, I am Pamelita Creed's daughter. I am Cephaly Maud Lewis's granddaughter. I am more than this. And so I did. I started going back to school. I got a job, and I was like, I'm gonna get into the independent living program. And they had, like, you had to take classes, and then you had to take an assessment. And, there was like a whole guideline of things that you had to kind of check off before you qualified. And so I got that all done. And I was like, you know what, I'm ready. I'm going to reclaim my life because I'm going to be 18 soon. And I don't want to be like so many of the other kids that I hear about that end up on the street or end up couch surfing or end up
Or
in
dead.
prostitution or in
Yeah.
and out of jail. Like, I don't want that. Yeah, that, and there are kids that I was in that home with, and, they're not around anymore. And so I count myself lucky, and extremely blessed that I'm still here, and that, my life, it's simple, but it's good. Yeah. Oh,
You okay? It's a lot.
yes, it is.
Take a moment. It's okay.
Oh man. You just, some things that you don't think about, and then you talk about it, and you're like, you're right back there,
I do. I mean, I can't put myself in your shoes because thankfully I've never ever been in them, but I can only imagine when you find yourself feeling like you're there, how it takes over for a little bit.
It does. It does. It's like I have to do like this grounding thing where I look around and I smell, and there's like a process.
Yeah. That's one of the questions I was going to ask you a little bit later, but I'll ask you now. How often does it creep up, and how do you ground yourself? What are your daily grounding rituals?
It used to come up a lot more, and I never used to handle it well. Like, I felt like I was slipping back into that. I have to please everybody because in independent living, there were, guidelines once you were in the program of how you had to
Hmm.
maintain. You had to it was very difficult, and they've since changed the guidelines because I guess they realized a lot of kids were burning out. Like, I was
Yeah.
working full time. I was working 60 hours a week. I was working 2 part-time 30-hour-a-week jobs,
Wow.
and I was going to school full time. And I didn't have a car, so I was riding the bus. So that added roughly
So much
3 or
time.
4 hours a day to my day. Like, in addition to everything I had to do, I was sleeping maybe 3 hours a night between homework
So
and just,
not healthy.
no, I was really, like, my best friend who has been with me kind of through this everything. Like, we've been best friends since we were 10. Um, and Jenna, you are on Facebook, so if you hear this, you you were like my platonic soulmate. You already know this. Like, she's the carbon copy of me in every way. And we often joke that if we were lesbians, we would be lovers.
That's awesome.
I love her. She's just amazing. But she's like, I can't believe, like, she looks back, she's like, I didn't have much of a social life, but I did try to go out, like, sometimes. And she's like, you would never know. You would just always seem so put together. And I was like, on the inside, I was dying.
It's too much. Yeah, it's just too much. But you started to really mentor other young women, I think, right? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, after I had aged out, it had been a couple years. They had redone independent living. Foster care had been privatized. So it was like a lot of community-based services and supports that were being poured into the kids that were in foster care here, which was amazing. Because what was happening is that kids were, from my area, were ending up all over the state. And so they lost, their school, they lost their friends, they lost their family, all of this. And, it's just dramatic. Like, I don't know if you've ever moved, but even just moving on your own volition, if you just decide, like, I'm going to move, I'm going to sell my house, I'm going to move, it's stressful. And so when
it is, we moved a lot when I was a kid.
So
I probably lived in
understand
17 different places by the time I graduated college.
Yeah, it's, it's just, it takes a toll, especially if you're, during that time where you're young and you're kind of finding out who you are and, who you are socially. And, it's constantly changing and changing and changing. And there's nowhere, you don't put down roots. So I was really excited when that happened. It happened just as I was aging out. So I didn't benefit from any of it, but that's okay. But, they were keeping kids in their, in their area so they could stay in school and, all of that.
Yeah,
they could
so
keep their
smart.
doctors if they already had doctors or whatever. And so that was great. Well, when all of this was happening, I was approached about a new initiative that was going to become an advocating force for kids in foster care and kids aging out of foster care. And they asked me if I would want to be involved with something like that and be involved with the youth advisory board and all of this. And I was like, absolutely, because, I had experienced, some really great things in care, but I also experienced some really, really horrible things. And so I was happy to share that insight and help them make a better system of care that would better meet the needs of the young people that they were serving. And so they laid out this groundwork for me and they're like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And, it involves some state level advocacy. So I would go to Tallahassee and, meet with the senators and the representatives and being a part of change, like real change, like things that I saw that was wrong, I was a part of making better. And it was truly powerful. And so I got to work with other young people that were still in care and say, listen, you have a voice, you have choice. This is your time to share what's on your heart and what's on your mind. What's wrong with the home that you're in? What would you like to see changed? What would make you feel more like a normal kid and not just a foster kid? Because there was a difference. Like, we weren't allowed to take like driver's ed. We weren't allowed to do sleepovers, we couldn't be picked up for our date if we were going to prom, So these were all things. A Normalcy Act was created that allowed for all of these really, just normal experience, that kids have. Yeah. So it was great to be a part of it and just to watch these kids really. Some of them stepped up, some of them didn't. It was actually a smaller group of kids that actually stepped up. I was surprised. It took me aback because as soon as I realized that there was something I could do, I wanted to do it. And there were so many kids that just kind of squandered the opportunity.
Or fear,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's both. It's fear, fear of success or fear of, not being heard, or just a generalized fear, like what's going to happen? What does this mean? Is there going to be retribution for,
exactly
in a home?
If I rock the boat.
Yeah. So there was a lot, and there were some kids that just didn't care, didn't take it seriously. And, and that's fine. We all come to that place at our own time. And some of them did come out of it. And again, some are, they're not with us anymore. And so I got to be a part of that for several years. And then I was offered a paid position as a life skills teacher with the same agency. And so I was able to help prep kids for the aging out process and going into independent living.
That seems like such important work to me.
It is. And it wasn't that these programs didn't exist before, but they weren't implemented properly.
Right.
And there wasn't any real world application. Like, it was doing worksheets and whatever. And so I struggled. Like, I destroyed my credit when I first aged out because I didn't understand credit.
Yeah.
I didn't understand balancing a checkbook, and I had a learning disability that was undiagnosed. And so I struggled.
So we're sending these kids out into the world, expecting them to function as ready adults, and they're not ready. They don't have the skills they need. They don't have the experience they need. And then we have this spiral effect, right? And all of these continued problems. So I love that you're doing that. Are you at all still involved in any way?
Actually, I was I was involved in various areas of social work and behavioral health for about 10 years. And then I, by a miracle, got pregnant after 4 years of trying. Finally got pregnant.
Congratulations. I mean, your baby's not a baby anymore. But.
Yeah, no, she's my oldest is 6 and my youngest is 4. And and the youngest was the biggest surprise because I was like, thank God we have one. And then I found out I was pregnant again and I was like, oh, holy crap. And my goal was to have her, my oldest, and go back to work. And then after having her and being home on my maternity leave, and I was like, I can't leave her. And so I did resign from my position. But a couple of years later, I was invited to I did many speaking engagements for the agency and trainings. And so I was involved in that way back on a more volunteer basis. And then I was asked to join the community board that kind of governs the local system of care for foster kids. And so I was able to be a part of that for a year until my mom got sick and I had to resign. But I was recently asked to come back. And so we are in the process of kind of getting that thing going again. So I'm really excited because that is my passion, and my end goal with my business and everything that I do is to start a comprehensive drop-in program for kids aging out of care, kids that are just at risk. Like maybe they weren't in foster care. They kind of, those fall through the crack kids where they don't get taken and they're just kind of out there and don't know what to do. Like my brother is one of those kids that, he was 18 when all of this happened and he really needed the support too. And so he's still struggling and he couldn't get it. And he's still there in that place where his life is a mess. And so I see him and I see the lack of resources that we have for people like him. And so I want to meet the needs of those people because it was just by a sheer just technicality, by just 1 year that he didn't qualify for services. And so he was discarded like trash, I felt like, and he's done a lot of really dumb things, but I wonder how much different he would be had he been able to get counseling, because he's never really dealt with my grandmother's death. They were also very close. He's had a lot of issues with mental health, and I wonder how different it would have been for him and for so many others had he been able to have access to that support. And so that is my goal. I want to start an OJT program where kids will learn how to be entrepreneurs, because some of them are just not
love that.
For,
I love that. I love it.
The standard, like working for a manager or working for a boss, or, and there's nothing wrong with not going to college. It's okay to go get a tech degree. It's okay to go get a certificate to be a body technician, like all of those things. I want to empower these young people. Like, you create your success. You name what that looks like for you.
Yeah.
If you have a roof over your head, if you have food to eat, someplace to stay, and you're not getting in trouble, you are successful. It doesn't matter if you don't have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. I don't care about that. I care that you are putting something back into society. And
I think that's great. That leads me in a really beautiful way to celebration, right? Celebration of success, right? I love what you just said. If you're paying your bills and you're eating and you're healthy, like, you get to define what's successful for you. And I will ask you the question that I ask every guest on the show is, you've built your own successes. You've started a successful business. You have a family. You're doing all of this really wonderful work. How do you stop and celebrate and honor those both big and also small, which I think are maybe even more important than the big successes?
When I met my husband, I was struggling. It was literally a choice between keeping the lights on or eating. That happened often. That was a regular occurrence in my apartment. And my mom was with me at this time. After she'd gotten sick and I, kind of stepped in that caregiver role, or it would be get mom's medicine or have bus fare,
Wow.
And so I look at my life. Me and my mom, we often joke around because we used to take because you can get ramen noodles for
oh yeah,
50 cents or
college
whatever.
staple. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so we would eat the raw noodles and then we would make the broth and then drink it. And then we would go to bed immediately so that we wouldn't be hungry. And so we joke about it now. And so,
I'm glad to hear your mom's well.
She's
gotten the
mostly.
impression that she passed. So I'm glad to hear that's not the case.
Oh no, she's still here. She's still kicking. Um, she lives with me. She's been with me for 10 years. Um, oh gosh, no,
That's great.
12.
I shouldn't make assumptions. I know better than that, but I just.
And I didn't mention her again. Like, she was out of the story for a while, but
Hmm. Hmm.
she we reconnected. I mean, not that we ever disconnected really, but I when I moved back to our local area, um, she let me stay with her while I waited for my apartment to clear up, because you can't sign a lease until you're 18, and so I was in a really
Hmm.
funky place. And then she became too sick to work shortly after, and so she moved in with me.
Okay.
Um,
All
but
right. So
yes,
how do you celebrate those successes?
it's a lot of comparing. It's a lot of then versus now. And
Hmm.
I talked to my husband because when we bought our house, it was one of the most joyous things I'd experienced in my life, because I'd never had a home, it felt like. And
Yeah.
so I was so glad that, at this time, my oldest daughter is 2, and I'm just like, we have a home. She has a home. Like, she has a place where she can always come and feel safe.
Yeah.
And so I look at that. I look at how I used to struggle and how I didn't think I was going to make it. And I see that, I have this life that, again, I said it earlier, that it's simple, but it's good. There's not a whole bunch of like sensational things happening in my life, but I have a messy home that belongs to me, and it has my kids in
I
it.
I had a babysitter tell me once, because I have 4 kids, so my home is messy
Oh
also.
wow. Oh
The
wow.
babysitter said, "My mom told me when you go into somebody's house to babysit and their house is too clean, I think it means they're not a very good parent because they're not paying enough attention to their kids, they're not playing enough, they're too busy cleaning." So it made me feel better.
It's funny that you say that, because my godmother, who passed away a couple years ago, she kind of stepped into the role of my grandmother. They were very much the same. She said something similar. She said, "A messy home is proof of a happy family."
Not harsh on all of you that have perfect clean houses. Good for you, but
Yeah,
it makes
the
us feel
great feat.
better.
Yeah, it helps, because I used to be that person that just would always want the house clean, and so I've kind of just fallen into the current. And I was like, you know what? There's a mountain of laundry sitting on my sectional right now. Like, I have an L-shaped sectional. The long tail of the L, you can't see it. It's just all clothes. It's like a foot
I
high, maybe
I
higher.
feel you. I feel you. So you celebrate successes by reminding yourself that you've come a long way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. I think that's great. So as we have to close the show, I feel like you and I have a lovely conversational banter. This is not the first time we've chatted, and we could keep
Yeah.
going, but somehow I have to make this a 30-minute episode, and I think we're at 45 minutes.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Didn't
so
seem like that.
I know it goes fast. So we're going to wrap the show. Can you tell us what your favorite charitable organization is to support? And I think this is such an important element of the show and a reminder to step up and into our community. So what is your favorite charity?
Well, I actually have 2, because they both have a deep, deep place in my heart. The first one is Candlelighters of Brevard, and it is an agency that serves the needs of family of of children fighting cancer. And a very dear friend of ours, their son was diagnosed with stage 4
Oh,
neuroblastoma. He is just the sweetest, most precious boy, and there's not a larger like cancer agency that serves here, and so I picked them because
okay.
I feel like I'm still making an impact in cancer, because my grandmother
Yeah.
was taken by cancer, my
Yeah.
godmother was taken by cancer. I have a dear friend that's battling breast cancer now, and so it's important to me to support any kind of cancer cause in any way that I can.
Yeah.
The other
Agreed.
agency is Brevard Family Partnership, which was the local agency that took over the system of care here for foster care and child welfare in general. And so they handle foster care, they handle adoptions, they handle counseling and mental health. It's just very all wholesome, encompassed system of care. And so I support them in any way that I can, both with time and financially.
Awesome.
Yes.
So remind us what part of Florida you're in.
I'm in Brevard County, Florida. We're in the Space Coast. I'm just about an hour away from Cape Canaveral, where the shuttles go off.
Okay, that's kind of cool. So I ask that because, each week I ask all of our listeners to go out and learn more about these organizations, whether that means you just pop onto their website or check out their Instagram feed or Twitter or look at their Facebook posts. If you have something to give, time, money, energy, or if you know somebody who might live in the area and you can say, hey, are you familiar with this organization? Can you share it?
Yes, that's awesome.
When somebody picks a local organization, we want to make sure that we're finding ways to connect all of our listeners with that local organization. So thank you so much for sharing those with us. Paula, can you share your 3 words with us one last time?
Yes, tides, because life is ebbs and flow, always moving. Faith, because without it, nothing is possible. And determination, because without it, life is nothing.
Yeah, those are great words. And I really love tides. I love the image, the way that it feels, even the physicalness of a tide rolling over you, and the idea that it comes in and it goes out. And you're such a wonderful inspiration and proof that you don't have to stay in one place, and that you can grow and you can change, and that there are all of these tides. That's a great word choice. I'm so grateful to have had you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad I was able to share.
Yeah, thank you. I know it was challenging at some times, so I appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability and your willingness. So you guys, that's all we have for this episode. I want to thank you for being here with us. As always, be sure to share the show with other people. That's how we grow. And subscribe, rate, and review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. I personally appreciate it, and I am grateful to have you here. So this is Heather Vickery reminding you, as always, to choose bravely. The Brave Files is proudly supported by Lost Format Apparel, a socially conscious clothing company. You already know that homelessness is a huge problem. Over 500,000 Americans are living without shelter, and millions more without consistent access to everyday basics. My friends at Lost Format know that solving homelessness is a much larger problem than any one company or person can solve on their own. It requires teamwork, sacrifice, strength, and building communities through personal and professional relationships. And isn't that exactly what the Brave Files podcast is all about? That's why I'm proud to say that the Brave Files has partnered with Lost Format, and together we're working to change the face of consumerism in addressing homelessness. You can now get one of 2 fantastic shirts custom designed specifically for the Brave Files. Each order goes towards providing necessities to the homeless. We have one shirt that, of course, says choose bravely, and another that reminds you that brave is always greater than fearless. Head on over to vickeryandco.com/store to see both beautiful shirts and to check out the entire product line from Lost Format. All of their stuff is super soft and comfortable and has an amazing fit. Use promo code BRAVE to get 10% off of your Brave Files custom t-shirts. And if you have an order over $30, your shipping is free. I choose bravely to take the plunge to help solve homelessness. Are you with me?
Thank you for listening to The Brave Files. Be sure to visit thebravefilespodcast.com to access the show notes and discover fantastic bonus content. Music composed and produced by Matt Lewis of Union Music, LLC.
Special thanks to our editor and audio mix expert, Andrew Olson. I am eternally grateful for all that he does to make each week sound so fantastic. You can hear more of Andrew's work at findandrewolson.com.